Good everyone, on today's video, and today we have a bit of a, shall we say, controversial topic, and that is involving the Tismar. Now, a lot of people in the game have their own, shall we say, favorite and what they would class as the best, and I'm going to throw my hat in the ring with that sort of thing and say immediately that this Tismar is the best Grand Striker hands down. Now that may come as a shock to those who fly your top tier jets with all your ballistic aiming computers and things like that. And that may come as a shock to Harry because he probably will say, well, in fact, no, he actually agrees with me for the most part on this thing. And that's about the Tismar. Now, the Tismar was available in, I believe, winter 20, was it 2019? Or was it 2020? No, it was 2019. And it was certainly an aircraft that certainly had its fair share of benefits over other aircraft available in the tech tree. Now, of course, if you don't have this thing, you are missing out. And there's a good reason why I think this thing is the best Ground Striker. Now, I don't have any gameplay for you, so to speak, today, because every time I try to do gameplay in this thing, I have an issue, whether that's a headset issue, whether that's a recording software issue, whether that's a gameplay issue, or the replay just doesn't work. I've decided to take a different route, and we're going to do this a little bit differently. And of course, we're still going to have a practical demonstration of this, but I'm just going to have to do it a little bit creatively. So this has been requested by On Off for quite some time. He's been asking for me to do a video on the Tismar, and I thought, well, he's been waiting for quite a while. Let's do something a little bit special for him. And I figured this would be a great way of showcasing it. So before we go any further, we're going to go over why, in general, and in terms of armament, why I think this is the case. So let's go over the guns and we'll go over the engines as well because they actually play quite a big role. Starting off with the guns, we have two 20mm Chauvet cannon with 150 rounds each. These are very handy for taking out light targets. But then we come to the main selling point of the Tismar. 37mm NS-37 cannon with 75 rounds each. That is 150 rounds. That's quite frankly ridiculous. And for 3.7, this thing's unbeatable in Ground Strike. Now, sure, you will struggle to take out targets like ships and also um, the heavy pillboxes with these guns, because in fact you can't actually kill them at all. But that's where the external weaponry comes into play, and we'll discuss that in a moment. But then, of course, compared to the majority of Ground Pandas that actually have quite bad rear weaponry, we have a pretty decent rear weapon, a 12.7 Berezin UB machine gun. This is certainly something that has its fair share of gun depression over the side of the aircraft, has its great elevation, and most importantly, great coverage. If someone gets behind you, they're going to taste the 50, and even if they do kill you, chances are you're taking them with you. And that's what not a lot of aircraft at this sort of BR can claim for that, especially when it comes to rear weaponry. Now, why did I mention the engines and why they come into play? Well, these are Michelin AM38Fs, and they have 1623 horsepower on WEP. You can actually fly back to base on one engine pretty comfortably. It's just if you have any sort of wing damage on the side that you lost your engine, I'm afraid to say you're not making it back, but that's the case for most aircraft. Now, why would I go ahead and state something that, shall we say, big about an aircraft that not many players can get anymore? And the simple fact of the matter is that the evidence is there. It has cannons to take out light targets and aircraft. It has bigger cannons to take out bigger targets and aircraft. And then, of course, we come to the external payload. Right here, I have my normal setup, other than the 8 RS-132 rockets, of two 500 kilogram bombs. I'm not going to say why these bombs are good. I'll mention it later. But then we come to the other weaponry choices. There's two 100 kilogram bombs, even though I don't know why you'd use these, same with these, but they're there if you really choose to do so. You then have 8 RBS-132 rockets and 8 RS-132 rockets. Obviously, you can only choose one, but in my personal opinion, it's between these two. But the majority of cases, you want the bombs, the 500 kilogram bombs. These recently got buffed, and they actually have more explosive filler than they used to. So you're getting more bang for your buck. Well, bang for your buck. Let's put it that way. In terms of belts, I recommend setting up the aircraft for armored targets in both offensive guns. This is because not only do you get the most amount of AP, but the AP rounds are very capable at knocking out aircraft, pilots, of course, and they're very good at taking out most targets in the game. And anything that your guns can't crack, your bombs will. Now, you only get 2 bombs, and a lot of aircraft in the higher tiers can get access to 6 bombs of this size, sometimes even 8. And the problem is that they also trade maneuverability for it. This doesn't. The Tismar still remains quite maneuverable to an extent when it comes to holding external payload. As a result, this is certainly something that you need to pick up on, and it is definitely something that a lot of people need to appreciate about the Tismar. So I mentioned about a practical showcase. How am I going to demonstrate that? Quite simple. We're going to go into a test flight. Now this may be unusual, but literally every time I've tried to do a recording on Tismar, something goes wrong. So yeah, it's just easy to do it this way, and not only that, I can demonstrate it a little better if I do so. So getting the aircraft up into the air, obviously we're not exactly at optimal airspeed to take off there. I just use the flaps to speed it up. But remember how I mentioned about the bombs? There's a little hidden trick, well I say trick, more like hidden gem about the Tismar that sets it apart from most others. And for this demonstration, I also have my guns split, so I have the 20s firing off my left mouse button, and my 37s firing off my right mouse button. So for this example, we have a couple of light targets over here. I'm going to use the cannons on the light stuff, or the smaller cannons on the light stuff, aka this truck, like so. But then this is where the Tismar really brings its own element. Not only is it quite maneuverable if you put the flaps down, especially for its size, but you have the 37s, as is going to be demonstrated. And as you can tell, they hit pretty dang hard. But then you come to the last point, the bombs. This is something that a lot of people tend to forget about the Merry Tismas. Obviously, those that own it will not forget about this thing anytime soon. But for this example, I'm going to bomb this bridge. Yep, you saw that right. The bombs drop separate. This makes it so much more useful in ground pounding. You get access to 2 500 kilogram bombs which are devastating to anything at this PR. Especially in the point where you get to an up tier 4-7, you can still pop every ground target in the game with this aircraft. Even ships are not safe from these 500 kilogram bombs. And some of the lighter ships like landing craft and things like that are not safe from your cannons either. But for this example, I'm going to drop the bomb on this ship and hope I don't miss, because I don't tend to bomb ships really, but that was bang on. But smaller ships, destroyers, cruisers and things like that are not safe from these bombs. And that's the thing, like, even though this is a low tier, well, I'd say mid-tier 3.7 ground pounder, in my opinion, it's the best. There's a good, like, I've listed every reason I can think of as to say why this is the best, but even when it comes to engaging targets from long distance, you can do so. I mean, fair enough, my aim's shit, but even if you don't want to use the light cannon, and you don't clean up anything in one pass, your gunner can have a go. Again, my aim is horrible because I haven't flown Tismar in a while, but this is just showcasing what this aircraft can do. And it's sad when people say that, like, there's better aircraft than what this can bring to the table. But I'm sorry, when it comes to ground pounding, I really can't agree. This thing just completely throws them out the park because of ease. It serves as a good multi-purpose aircraft that can really support its team well. And even if it doesn't do much, chances are it's taking at least a bird or two down with it. And having access to those bombs is simply incredible. So let's go back to the hangar. I hope that's something a little bit different, because obviously we don't really tend to do things like that. We don't really use the test flight that much in my videos. But I hope that puts forward a point that maybe if someone, well, if you can get this thing in the future, let's say they bring it back for an event, for goodness sake, get it. This thing is not going to be nerfed anytime soon. I can promise you that. Like, yeah, the cannons that hit it, like the 151 will eviscerate it. There's not much you can do about that. That's just how Gaijin is. But in terms of ground pounding, this thing can't be beat as far as I'm concerned. And there may be better bombers that can do a job similar, like Tu-2S, which has 4 500 kilogram bombs, which can also drop separate. But to be brutally honest, those are much higher BR. They face much more scarier planes, and the Tismar has also another party piece about it. If we go to Russian tanks, it has an amazing lineup to back it up. Of course, some of these will only apply if you have them. You have stuff like the Mark II Matilda to back it up, the BT-7F32. The SMK isn't great, but it's a great bullet sponge. You then have the T-34 1942, KV-2, KV-1 L11, another T-34, even the 1940 can back this thing up quite well. You've got access to some good tank destroyers, some fun AA, and even though you don't have much of a light tank, you still have a light tank to back it up. And if you don't want to play the T-80, but you have the T-126, this will still punch its weight reasonably well. If that doesn't tell you how much of a good aircraft this is and why I really suggest if you can get this thing in the near future, I heavily suggest it, I don't know what will. But anyway, I'm going to let you guys off. I hope you enjoyed today's little, shall we say, discussion on the Tismar. Let me know your opinion in the comments below, and I will see you all on the next one.